Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Good evening, anybody who's watching online to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies?
We've just had apologies from Councillor Skipper.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting, to approve the minutes of the meeting of the 29th of June. Anybody have any comments? Am I free to sign these? No? Okay, thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Members are invited to disclose any disclosable pecuniary interest and non-pecuniary interest in respect to matters which we are going to discuss. We are all associated with item number 6 because that is a councillor and the meeting must come before the planning committee. So we all have an interest in that one. Anyone else? Councillor Garrett.
And I'm sure everybody else will have the same. We obviously did a site visit for this as well, so I'm assuming that's not going to be mentioned. Please, could we mention that as well?
Yes, I was a little bit confused, which is not difficult, with the application where we had the site visit, because I seem to recall seeing somewhere that if you don't attend, you can still speak and vote. Is that correct? Because it's not normally.
So yes and no. It's if the item is deferred for a site visit, then unless you attend the site visit, you can't vote subsequently when it comes back to committee. But as this wasn't for that reason, then you can all vote and debate this one.
So it would appear that because this was first, we can all discuss and all vote, even though we didn't attend the site visit. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor Betton. I would like to pass over to and introduce you to our recently appointed Corporate Enforcement Team Leader, Maxine Lewis, who's going to talk us through the monitoring report.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms Greenfield. Members, the report before you is based on performance of the team during the last 2 quarters. That's Q4 of the previous financial year, Q1 of the current financial year. Since the last report was made to you, there have been resourcing changes in the team, and as a result, there's been some change to proactive work, and we've recommenced compliance check work. We've formulated a longer term plan, which we intend to implement in the coming year to 18 months, but largely we are trying to implement changes which will improve our use of technology to assist the team and our overall transparency across the functions we undertake. You will see from the report, Mr Chairman and members, that currently we only have one key performance indicator, and that key performance indicator relates to the time it took for officers to make a site visit after a case was opened and allocated to them. Pleased to say that in both quarters that indicator was far exceeded. However, we do plan in future to be looking at different key performance indicators in due course. The report runs through the 5 enforcement notices that were issued during the quarter. and the appeals which were determined during the quarter. We also have a number of appeals pending determination which remain with the planning inspectorate. And as you'll see in the report, excuse me, we have prioritised a number of procedural changes which hopefully will take place in the coming quarters. Chairman, we'd be happy to update you or answer any questions in relation to any matters in the report.
Thank you. Members, we've seen the report. Does anyone have any questions for Maxine, who is not well? She's off sick, so let's keep it quick and short. Well, you can't get shorter than that. Okay, I think as there are no questions, and as you should be resting, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again in happier times.
Thank you, members, and hopefully I'll see you in person in the next quarter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, now on to the planning applications. Item 5, application number 22-1001 FFU Westcroft Park Farm, Windlesham Road, Chobham. This is where some of us had a day almost at the races. Mr. Neville, sorry. Neville.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to the redevelopment of Westcroft Park Farm, resulting in the demolition of all buildings on site aside from Postbox Cottage and the construction of 20 residential units, 9 times 4 bedroom, 7 times 3 bedroom, 3 times 2 bedroom and 1 times 1 bedroom units, together with ancillary parking and landscaping. The application is being presented to the committee as it relates to a major development. There are no updates to report at this time. The application is subject to a non-determination appeal, and therefore the planning inspector is now the determining authority. However, it is still necessary to conclude what the council's decision would be. Westcroft Park Farm is an operational equestrian polo club facility with ancillary grooms accommodation, situated on an irregular shaped plot of land on the northern side of Windlesham Road, between the settlements of Windlesham and Chobham, falling within the Greenbelt. The site and the surrounding area are rural in character, with several agricultural and equestrian uses. The site benefits from a lawful equestrian use, which has been established through the various planning permissions on the site. The site benefits from a lawful equestrian use, which has been established through the various planning permissions on the site. As per the definition within the MPPF, the application site is considered previously developed land. Whilst there is some overlap between equestrian and agricultural uses, for the purposes of this assessment, the site is not considered an agricultural use. Here we see an aerial view of the wider site context. As we can see on the application site, the buildings are closely set together away from the rear of the site, whilst the site is bounded by mature vegetation. The buildings on the site measure approximately 3,000 square metres in footprint, with a range of building heights, standing at a maximum height of approximately 7.55 metres and going down as low as 1.1 metres. The wider surroundings are relatively open, as you would expect from these rural surroundings. To the bottom left corner, which is to the east of the site, is the horticultural nursery, separated from the site by Woodcock Lane. To the top left, which is to the south, is the Polo Club event facility where the horses and riders compete, with the application site used for stabling and accommodation of these horses. To the right, which is to the west, is Westcroft Park Manor House and its substantial grounds. A permissive path also runs adjacent to the rear of the site. Here are some views of the site. The first photo on the left showing the view when you enter the site, whilst the 2 pictures to the right is the building to the southwest corner where the 2 chalet bungalows are proposed. As we can see, all the buildings are open-sided, whilst having a relatively lighter appearance than a comparative brick building. Again, a similar situation here, whilst as we move towards the rear of the site, as shown in the picture to the right, the heights of the buildings start to come down. Finally, we have some views of the rear of the site, which is free from above-ground development. This area is used for parking, although this is of a transient nature. Beyond the rear of the site are open grassed fields. The site benefits from extant planning permission for the construction of a large manor house. A certificate of lawfulness was granted in October 2019 to confirm that works have commenced. The proposal seeks the construction of 20 units, of which 80% are 3+ bedroom units. There would be 2 chalet-style bungalows sited to the southwest corner of the site, whilst the remaining units would be set within this rigid grid-like layout, comprising of largely 2-storey buildings in height. The spread of development is pushed back towards the open land to the rear of the site. The image to the right shows the existing layout to provide a comparison. These are some views of the proposed elevations. Again, you can see the variations to the designs of each of the dwellings. And this provides an aerial comparison of the site. We can see the closely set layout, which is of the proposed development, which is more akin to an urban setting, as well as seeing how the proposal develops over the existing open areas of land. Go back. The council's main objection relates to the harm to the greenbelt in terms of its openness and the purposes of the greenbelt. There is a relatively modest reduction in building volume. However, the overall spread of development is increased, encroaching upon previously open land towards the rear of the site, whilst the overall height across the site is also increased. The buildings also have a heavier appearance compared to the open-sided timber-framed buildings. Taking these factors in combination with the activity on site, which results in activity throughout the day and the year, compared to the existing use, which has lows and peaks during the week and during the year, we believe that there is substantial harm upon the openness of the greenbelt. These factors, together with the regimented grid layout, also result in a reason for refusal on design grounds due to harm to the rural character of the area. The site is also considered to be within an unsustainable location and goes against the council's spatial strategy, which seeks development, particularly of this size, to be located towards town centres. There is no safe, convenient route to the site. There is no safe, convenient route to the site outside of private vehicle use and no safe route to schools. Whilst the site provides staff accommodation, this is not considered comparable to the proposed use. The staff numbers are subject to the season, with a maximum of 25 staff on site, and these are individual males who travel to the country for the sole purpose of working, and therefore would not have the same need for local services, for example, leisure and educational facilities. As members who attended the site visit can attest to, the living accommodation for the existing staff cannot be compared to the proposed spacious family accommodation proposed. The proposal also fails to provide a policy-compliant affordable housing offer, and officers are not satisfied that this is justified by the viability position, which rests on the alternative use value of the site. The other reasons for refusal relate to the failure to sign a legal agreement regarding SANG and insufficient information regarding drainage. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This, just to recap, is a polo-driven facility. It has seasonal use in that people come and play polo in the fields opposite, and for a short period of time they may stable their horses with their grooms on this site that we're talking about. There are up to 200 ponies there at any time. Some are associated with the local club, but most come from other places to play and then go away again. The photographs do not give justice to the state that it's in, is what I would personally say. The accommodation is a box room. There are a number of box rooms. You've got room for a bed, not much else. This is just for those who did not go on the site visit. Any comments, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually got a number of questions, so do you want me to go through them one by one, or I'm going to cut them short, so you'll be very quick. Cool, okay. The first question I've got is page 20, internal consultation. It says climate change officer, no representation received. So does that mean you haven't had anything at all, what, for or against? Page 21, 6.1. 6.1 states that we had 14 letters of consultation were sent on the date, but 6.2 seems to be a complete repeat of that, yet there were 7 letters on that one. So I just want a clarification on whether 6.1 and 6.2 is a copy and paste error. Page 23, just a question referenced the provision of affordable housing. We obviously expect 40% and they're only offering 15, and I would like to really understand why they think they should be able to get away with that. That's that one. Page 29. The height maximum 9.7 metres, and I think I asked the question on the day. That's far in excess, and that's 7.4.5. That's far in excess of the building that's already there. So it was already quite an over-towering building. This will be even higher. So I don't see how that should be acceptable. And I think, let me just check that one. Yeah, so I think the last question is no amenity space for the flats at all, which I know there's communal space, but there's no actual allocated amenity space from what I can see for the flats, which again I don't think is acceptable, but you should be able to clarify that for me. And that's 7.5.7. I think that was my last point on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the questions. In terms of the climate change officer, yeah, we didn't receive any representation from them, so there was no comments for us to put down. In terms of the representation, it looks like a copy and paste error, but 6.2 is the correct paragraph that should be there. In terms of the affordable housing provision, so their viability assessment rests on the alternative use value. So as we talked before, there's the extant permission for the manor house. Now the manor house is valued at around £25 million. So that's artificially, in our view, artificially inflated the value of the land. And that's on the basis that that's the justification that they're providing for why they couldn't provide a policy compliant affordable housing offer. Now we've considered that in the report, and we don't agree with that method. They haven't provided a value for the existing land value, and notwithstanding the price or the option paid for the site should never have an impact on whether they meet and afford, whether they are policy compliant or not. In terms of the height, yes, that is a 9.7 metre maximum height on site, which dwarfs what is the maximum height currently, which is about 7.45 metres. And in terms of the amenity space for the flats, there is no provision, private amenity space provided for the flats. Our RDJ doesn't set a standard in terms of the amount required for flats, but it does set out that there is a need for private amenity space.
I thought there was as well in our residential example. There's a minimum space, private space standard in it.
I don't believe there is for flats.
I seem to remember having a conversation about it in the past.
There is
That's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah.
Councillor Kang.
Oh, I haven't got my name, just D31. Yes, the question I want, this road is quite a hazardous road, and I just want to know, has there been any accidents or incidents reported on that particular road? Because the entrance is very, if you were going to develop something, there would be a tremendous amount of traffic on this road, and it seems a very hazardous exit from that site.
I mean, I don't have any figures in terms of what road accidents have occurred on that site. But the location of the site is part of the reason for refusal. You know, Windlesham Road is a 40 miles per hour road. There's no safe pedestrian access, and that forms part of our reason for refusal in terms of the suitability of the site, in terms of a sustainable location.
I'll just come back to, the reason I say that is if these horses were moved off the site, where would they actually be sort of well, not down, levied it off? Because when I was visiting the site, someone mentioned a horse had been knocked, there had been an incident there.
I can answer that question. If this site is developed for housing, there will be no horses. At the moment, horses are transferred across the road, either in vehicles or led on reins. That an exercise is happening all the time. I mean, when we went there, I saw 2 people, as Councillor Garrett and I were going all over the place trying to find it, one person leading about 4 or 5 horses along the road on 2 occasions, and that was just in our visit. That would cease. All of the ponies that are liveried there would be put out to other livery places in the district, and people coming to play at the polo club would bring their vans, horse boxes, straight to the playing fields and not going into this facility. So the movement of horses across the road would cease, but you would have people going to the houses. Anyone else? Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just a question for Mr. Rahman. This case is currently under appeal, so we're not the determining authority for it, and it's under appeal due to non-determination. Is that because there's been an unusual delay in processing it and bringing it to the committee?
So this item was due to be seen at the previous committee, but at the last moment, the Surrey County Council Highways withdrew their objection. So we had to reassess our position and amend the report accordingly, and that's where it's fallen out of time.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thanks. If I could please just come back on the private flatted amenity space. 8.24 in our 8.25 in our design guide does say that private outdoor amenity space on flatted developments is considered important, blah, de, blah, de, blah. So it is something I think we've talked about before in this committee, and therefore there should be private, albeit in some cases continual, i.e. across, but there should be private amenity space. So I wonder if we could add that, if it's not in there, please, for an additional reason for refusal.
So in terms of the RDJ, the guidance doesn't specifically state the quantum of amount of space. It does state that there needs to be private amenity space for flatted developments, and then it sets out guidelines in terms of the size of that. So we agree with that. We've added that as part of the reason for refusal on the character grounds as well, just demonstrating that in the absence of providing the communal, the private space for the flats, that the site represents an overdevelopment of the site. Sorry, the proposal represents an overdevelopment of the site.
And are there first floor flats?
Yes, there are.
So they should have balconies. I'm not sure if they're in there according to our design guide again. And then also just to come back on the use of the site. The site is used to walk ponies across. I appreciate that somebody leading 8 ponies might sound absolutely horrific, but that's their decision. They're a commercial organisation. So it's not really a planning matter as to whether or not that increases the risk to the ponies. It's not something that we can consider within here. The other thing to bear in mind with Chobham is that we're not in a catchment area for secondary schools. So 3 different postcodes in Chobham presents 3 different lists of schools that the children could go to within a 10-mile radius. And we don't have any non-fee paying school. So we have a Gordon's, which is within 2 miles of Chobham. That's the only secondary school we've got. So development there really does need wider thinking. And certainly this particular development is something that one would hope would bring new families to Chobham, which we're really keen to have. But it is, at the moment, we're not set up to deal with those new families, and we have repeated and continual problems with secondary school provision for the children that are already in the village.
Councillor Garrett.
I just wanted to make one more point, and it's not a planning, but I think it needs to be voiced, and you mentioned it with the accommodation. Depending on what happens with this planning application, I would suggest we need to make sure the officers in whatever department need to know the facilities for the people that were meant to be living there are totally out of order. They are. I don't know how to describe them, but I wouldn't want to live there for sure. Now I know that's not a planning constraint, but if this doesn't go through, there is a potential chance that there will still be people living there, and I think the relevant department within Surrey Heath needs to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Pokey. Anybody else? Any comments? Okay, we are being asked to give our view, because we are not the authority. We have a recommendation that the officers would refuse it if we were the authority. Can I have a Councillor Wheeler? So, yeah, and a seconder? Yeah, okay, thank you. Anybody for that recommendation?
That's unanimous. Councillor Parrott?
Abstaining. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the last item, application number 230602, 39 Alphington Avenue, Frimley. This, as we mentioned earlier, is a councillor, Councillor Ashbury. Officer.
Thank you. Yeah, as you just said, this application has been decided by the Planning Committee because the applicant is a councillor and there are no updates. So this is the application site. It includes the residential garden of 39 Alphington Avenue, as well as a strip of privately owned amenity land to the northeast. This plan shows the entirety of the land within the ownership of the applicant. This land has always formed part of the ownership of number 39, but is not all within the residential curtilage. So the application is for the change of use of some of this land to the side to form private garden incidental to the enjoyment of the dwelling house at number 39 and to enlarge the curtilage of the dwelling. The development also includes the erection of replacement fencing. It's not proposed to enclose all of the land outlined here in red. Originally there was a boundary wall along the side boundary. This came down in a storm. A fence has already been erected, but it's due to be moved back from its current position by 0.5 metres. So starting from the left to right, this is the existing site from the front, then from the side across the junction, and then taken from the open land to the side by Tomlin's Pond. The photo on the right shows the current position of the fence, but is proposed to relocate this fence further away from the pavement. These show the site from Tomlin's Avenue. The instep will be retained, albeit set back 0.5 metres from the edge of the pavement. The photo on the right shows the fence towards the rear of the site. This would not move from the existing position which is in the same location as the previous wall was. So this shows the proposed block plan with the proposed setback position of the fence by 0.5 metres from the pavement, and it's the partial enclosure of the privately owned land to the side of the existing curtilage. It's not proposed to enclose all of the land, just the area outlined here in red. And these plans show the proposal in a little more detail with the setback, the step-in, the total length and the height. And the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, anyone have any comments? We have an officer recommendation for approval. Councillor Garrett.
I just have one question. I note that in 6.1, it says a revised neighbour letter was sent out on the 29th of July. To date, no letters of representation have been received. Now, I had a recent application in my own ward where the resident who was making the application was chasing for it, and I found out that one letter hadn't been sent to one of the neighbours, so they had to wait another 21 days after the date of the letter. Now, if the 29th of July was when the letter went out, 21 days is certainly not the 27th. So is that, the date can't have been sent the 29th of July, so I'm guessing that, I know exactly. So is the date the letter was sent out the 29th of June, in which case we have, I'm assuming, 21 days. Okay. Thank you. In which case I have no problem.
Anyone else? No? Well, with that amendment, we have an officer recommendation for approval. Do I have a proposer for that? Councillor Whitcroft, and a seconder, Councillor Noble. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Councillor Mears, I didn't see a hand.
He's not part of the committee.
That will be why then.
And that was unanimous.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening.